Welcome, fellow last placers, to another episode of LPF Debrief, where Chris and I talk about TV shows, movies, and sometimes anime. There we go. It's getting
It's
better,
getting there.
Chris.
It's
I
getting
am
there, man.
nailing it.
I like
All
it.
right. So we're just like I said, we talk about all those things. Today's episode, it is a what if debrief, but we start every episode the same way we do all the time, and that's shaming Yendi for not watching the content that we watch. So, shame.
Shame.
All right, so we're going to talk about what if episode 6, which was Killmonger saves Tony Starks. And let me tell you, series is really becoming one of my favorite Marvel series because of the tone that they take with these TV shows. And I think it's a part of not expecting it to go dark, even though we've literally just had what, 3 episodes of this that just went dark. And it's still shocking every time because I'm like, are they really doing this? It was so bad. Like, this wasn't like, this was dark, but the things that they're doing made me check the rating of the show. Like, I was like, is this like rated E or like, so I had to make sure because I was like, this is harsh. So anyway, we're gonna go in get into detail of that about that. But before we do that, we're gonna do the normal things, guys. Like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. We are doing a mouse giveaway, and I'm putting it in the beginning so you guys know. Do all that stuff so we can give away this mouse. It's almost been
Yeah.
what, a month and a half now. So
Yep.
someone wants this mouse. We know it. So tell a friend, hit that sub button, do all that good stuff. So Chris, what'd
Oh,
you think of the episode?
real quick. Also, spoilers up
Oh,
ahead. If you have not seen the episode, please make sure to stop here, go watch it, and then come on back.
and if
Uh,
you don't mind spoilers, just stick around
yeah, yeah.
because we're
If you
going to
like the
spoil
conversation,
it.
yeah. I went into this episode with your theory in mind from back a couple episodes back, where it's like, oh, we could totally get Killmonger in our universe, and he could become, yeah. I feel like that personally, that was thrown out the window.
Not really though. Not really.
I wouldn't
It'd be
trust it,
thrown.
bro.
It'd be thrown out the window as him being not a villain.
Yeah.
Not being a hero. But I mean, at the end of the episode, which we will get to, it kind of
Yeah.
happens.
Love the episode. Killmonger was he's just a badass dude. Oh my god. Like he gave
The
me,
character.
yeah, man. He gave me that that itch that you get whenever you know, like that whole episode, like he's doing wrong, and you just like you see your characters on screen and you just want to tell them, but it's like
Yeah.
it's like you're not really in this, but it's just like, bro, he's just like, how do you not see it? So really cool, really good episode. I did like how I did like Tony Stark quite a bit. Seeing him come out of everything kind of like unscathed, and he's doing okay. Seeing how he acted after that was interesting. The fact that he's like, oh, this is my best friend. This guy saved my life. He like gave everything to him. He wanted to make sure that he was well taken care of for protecting him. And yeah, another episode with T'Challa in it, which was great. Yeah, it was great. I loved it. As soon as I knew it was gonna go there too, I was just like, okay, so that's 3 episodes so far.
Episodes,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
It was
rumor is there's
funny.
4, so we might get one more. Hopefully there's a lot more of them. They can keep putting them in. He could be in everything. It's so
I
good.
love him so much.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, man. What do you think of the
Yeah,
episode?
I mean the episode was fantastic. It was I mean I'm going to do a series, not a series, but I'm going to do a rewatch because this one is up there with probably my favorite. So I think between this and episode 2 have really, because they did the balance of this episode really well, right? So, and that's one of the things that I love about these episodes is where you did enough of a balance to where you hinted at all the old stuff and things that happened, but you gave us a brand new story, right? So we still had all of the things that kind of happened before Iron Man 1, right? So we had all of that and how that universe was the same. And then the change happens, right? So then it's, Killmonger goes and he saves Tony Stark's, like with a obviously intent for other things to do. But then we see how that changes Tony as a character. So they did multiple things here, and I'm starting to see the trend that I like the episodes where I'm seeing the same characters change drastically because of the event that happened, right? So, a perfect example, episode 2, we saw how drastically Thanos changed because of this part of the world, right? And then in
Yeah.
this one, we saw how different Tony Stark acted because he didn't have to become a hero anymore. So he didn't he still wanted that billionaire playboy life, and he didn't have that encouragement of being a hero anymore. So I think this episode did a really good job at establishing, hey, Tony's still a genius. He still knows all these things. And yes, he feels bad about the weapons, but does he feel bad as he did in Iron Man 1 when he actually becomes a hero?
Yeah.
You can kind of see that in him where it's like, yeah, I feel bad, but I guess we can fight war with war. Like a not and it goes against him trying to, even going against the Accords and all
Yeah.
that stuff because he just has a different relationship now with his whole entire environment. And I think this episode did a really good job at that.
Yeah, I feel like what you see the change on his face whenever after you see the soldiers die and everything, and he's out of the car and he's behind the rock, and then Killmonger, like as soon as he steps up and he looks up at him, you see the change of like this guy's a badass, and you see Tony become a fan. Before we move on, I had to point out because I'm gonna forget. Tony looked really different to me. Like the animated Tony looks like he looked a little closer to Doctor Strange, like having that dark, like I was just like, what is going on?
He did. It was a little bit different. It was a little bit different of a look. But
overall,
I guess they titled that with the voice acting being different too. So it was kind of like, it's hard. It's Tony, but it's also like not the MCU Tony.
Yeah,
So.
and then I did like how they cast out Obadiah. And how he said, he's like, hey, he hired the 10 rings, which they mentioned the 10 rings. And I was like, perfect. Like, this is great that we just got this movie. And it's just like, oh yeah, they had 2 weeks and they'll be able to know that this is like an organization that people could. And I was like,
and you would know from Iron Man 3 also because
do they mention it in Iron 3?
Yeah, they do. The whole symbol's there in Iron Man 3. Because remember,
Iron Man 3, I gotta rewatch. I don't remember any. Well, I don't remember anything from it. I don't remember at all. So I'm like,
I mention it. Iron Man 3 mentions it because remember, Iron Man 3's whole story was around the fake Mandarin, which really wasn't Mandarin.
Yeah,
and then they basically what they did was they realized they messed up because they wanted that to be the real Mandarin, and then afterwards they fixed all of that and was like, oh, it's a fake Mandarin. This is that's what they did. Like Shang-Chi was legit just trying to fix their wrong because they've been backpedaling from that since Iron Man 3 came out. Because like I said before, Avengers 2 kind of pretty much just washed out Iron Man 3 because his suits got blown up, all that good stuff happened. And then all of a sudden in Avengers 2, he shows up with a suit.
What are you talking about?
He's like, no one even mentions it. And then we don't even get a re-mention of Iron Man 3 until Infinity War.
Yeah,
not even in Endgame.
In Endgame,
when he goes, "Oh, I thought you gave all this up." Like when Cap says that, and then he says, "Well, now I'm here." Like that's the only mention that we really get of that, and that's also like a Civil War tie-in. So and then we see the kid at the end of Endgame. Like that's how much they regretted Iron Man 3. And when people are like, "Oh, Iron Man 3 is not that bad," I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" They literally tried to wipe the movie away. And then now they've been backpedaling this whole time. But
I mean,
now
good on them on freaking backpedaling because they.
Well, yeah, they fixed it now. Now it's fixed because people were upset, and that's the way you realize. That's the one thing I like about the MCU. They realize, you know what, this didn't work the way we thought it was, but we're also a comic book, so we can kind of fix it in this. We can fix this. So I enjoyed that a lot. So yeah, they do mention the 10 rings. So bringing that and having it part of Tony's story was great because it was mentioned.
I just feel like I think because I have it so fresh, Shang-Chi is so fresh in my mind that I'm like, oh, this is great. Whenever they out him, it's nuts. And then Happy getting his punch in.
Because of his boxing career. Because remember, Happy is a boxer, so that's why he was able to throw a well-placed right hook to the face. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that it's cool when they mention things because it also makes sense that Killmonger was even in Afghanistan. Because remember, in Black Panther, they mentioned him fighting and being a Navy
Yeah.
SEAL member who fought in Afghanistan. So the likelihood of him being able to be there made sense, besides him actually getting the intel to be able to do his whole plan, which his plan was fantastic. Like, it really goes to show like how good and how smart a villain can be, you know? And that's one of the things I enjoy is when you go, you know what? Because everyone knows I'm a sucker for villains. I just think they have very detailed, interesting stories on why they turn, right? And I
Mhm.
think I'm more interested in those stories, not because morally, obviously, I feel I'm always going to side with the heroes because like I just don't like Thanos's idea. Yes, it made sense, but it was also ridiculous. Like,
Mm.
you know what I mean? It was legit genocide. Like
No, no,
he
no,
could
no,
have
no.
handled that. Yeah, he could
Is
have
it
handled
random?
that a completely different way. So the fact when people are like, "Oh, well, I agree with Thanos," and it's like, "Do you agree with the genocide part too?" Because that's not right. Like, you know what I mean? Because yes, he's saying things that make sense. Where yes, there's an overpopulation, but he also could have just doubled everything, or tripled everything, or quadded everything. Like, you know what I mean? He didn't have to cut people in half. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then this is the same kind of thing where, yes, Killmonger, like you're hurt, and we understand that, but also the route you're taking to get to your goal is morally incorrect.
It was insane, bro.
Like,
The
you know what
amount
I
that he had to
mean?
put in, he
Yeah.
put in a lot of work. It was years of work
I mean,
that
he
he got
did
to that
because
point. Yeah.
it started all the way in Afghanistan, where
Yeah.
he's literally like, he needed to know exactly where Tony Stark was. He needed to make sure he became friends with Tony Stark. He needed to make sure he outed what's his name, like you
Obadiah.
said,
Yeah.
Obadiah. He needed to make sure he could manipulate, enough of Tony so that Potts wouldn't believe him, like, Happy wouldn't believe him, and like he could do no wrong in Tony's eyes. But he also knew Tony's character because Tony is a person who's in the limelight. He's a person who's egotistic, and all of those things. And he had a backstory that was similar to Killmonger. So where he was like, "Hey, like both of our dads," like that scene when they're talking, he's like, "Both of our dads, died doing this or doing that," and then it's like, okay, he needed to make sure that relationship was there. So it was really good. I mean, Michael B. Jordan, come on, man. Like, what can we say, dude? Like, the dude is just, he's amazing. We
Yes, he's
had
really good.
the whole anime reference also when they were
Yeah, the
building the thing with
Gundam.
the Gundam, and he was
He's
like,
like,
"I
I like
like
him.
anime," which because Michael B. Jordan likes anime.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I like anime too. So, and if you're not watching anime, you guys should. So I'm just saying. But just going through all of that stuff, and then I mean, Tony predicting his own death again, like, was kind of crazy because like he's just like, hey, I'm probably gonna go out some way, like, some crazy way, and he kind of predicts that again, and it's all like, man, they did a really good job at, like I said, making it close enough to the story to where we're like, oh, we get all that stuff, but making it so different, and bringing back Claw, just great because that was the way that he got to Wakanda anyway. And now he just found a new way to still incorporate him into the story. And that whole scene was epic when
Yeah,
they did
man.
the, yeah,
But
when
whenever
they
he takes
send
out
Rhodey in.
T'Challa and
I know, come on,
Iron
man.
Patriot, I was like, oh my god! Like
Yeah,
I was as soon as the caskets came up and he's
yeah,
standing at the funeral, I was like, that's cold. This is
yeah.
so cold.
He's a cold. That's what I'm saying. He's a cold individual. I
Yeah.
don't care what you think
Yeah.
about. Oh, he literally was just doing things dark. Like, he didn't even like have like, let's have a conversation about this. Maybe they'll agree with me because remember, even after all of this, and if you remember in Black Panther, like T'Challa then started to understand. He understood Killmonger's motive. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't that T'Challa wasn't like agreeing with some of his stances. T'Challa was like, you don't have to do it this way. Like, you don't have to take our weapons and then become this whole power entity of basically doing what just happened. There's other ways to change the world. And that's an argument in like real life. Like, that's a real life debate that people have because you don't know where is that line, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the good things they show about T'Challa and Killmonger is that like you have these stories to where they both want to handle a situation a certain way, but one way is a little bit more radical than the other. But also, in Killmonger's defense, what has changed trying it to do it T'Challa's way? You know what I mean? Like, what is the change that has been brought? So it's really that whole clash and that whole like story arc, which is why Black Panther is so good. And I feel like a lot of people miss those little bit like those tidbits of it, is that there's so many like intellectual things that are just happening and like moral questioning that's happening within the story of a superhero story, which I will get to a rant on later on in the episode, because I do have some words for a director out there, but I'll
Oh
talk about
shoot!
that later.
All right, all right.
But yeah, so it was really cool.
Yeah, that like I said, that funeral scene really got to me because he's
Yeah.
like when he's standing there next to everybody. I'm really happy that Tony, like you know, it kind of reminds you like, hey, Tony's smart, and then he shows the playback of the situation. And he's like,
Hmm.
I'm not stupid, bro. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
pay attention to what's going on. And yeah, unfortunately, Tony gets xed out there too. That scene, it really felt, it really sucked that he didn't have the suit on him. Whenever he's like walking in the background and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and he's like,
Because you know the vulnerability
yeah,
now, though. Like,
exactly,
you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
not the Tony that we know, to where, yes, and it's like Killmonger even brought up. It's like, hey, you've never fought before. Like, you know what I mean? You don't
yeah.
know
What are
what
you
it's
gonna do?
like to
Yeah,
be out here fighting. So you don't know what to do. But Tony's still showing his smarts, like,
yeah,
hey, you program this thing, but I bet like, I can program this to fight you. But it was also like Killmonger, in a sense, created it, so obviously he can beat it because he's gonna freestyle it.
yeah,
And having the spear obviously did helped, because he had the weapon, like,
yeah.
you know what I mean, to destroy it. So there are so many good things that happened. I did like that they showed the the robot again, Tony's robot,
Oh
when he's like
yes, and
he's
he
like,
like
hey,
he's
that's a
like, hey,
friend.
be nice.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
it was a lot of interesting things, man. I the whole yeah, like I said, the Gundam wing was all Paul Bettany being Jarvis again. Like, hearing that again is always so dope, because now we just associate, like, and I think a lot of people don't think about that, but like he was in the whole series. Like, he was in Iron Man 1, like he's there.
up
And
until
then
he's
it
in the
just,
actual,
now
yeah,
we associate the voice with Vision,
yeah,
but like he was Jarvis. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's so cool that to hear his voice and be like, oh wait, that is Paul Bettany. Anytime you hear Jarvis again, so
yeah.
it
And
it it's so cool.
but continuing with the messed up part, like whenever he finally gets into Wakanda and hugs the king, like the king hugs
Oh
him,
yeah,
and I'm like, bro, he's literally hugging his
yeah,
son's murderer. Like this is like just
yeah.
that
It
feeling.
was
It's just
all,
like, oh man,
and yeah, and it's crazy because now, like, because of that, the events of Civil War never happened, right?
yeah,
Because Iron Man never becomes Iron Man. And that was one of the things I loved at the beginning of the episode too, was when they showed like Tony's highlights, which basically like him saying all the lines and doing
yeah,
all the things
and
and
then with
doing
the
the,
gun,
doing all that, which was really cool to see that again. But again, it shows how these events now have changed, because if Iron Man never becomes Iron Man, we never get the Avengers. And if we don't get the Avengers, we don't get Civil War. We don't get a bunch of stories to happen, because we just don't know. And in part, we don't get like Thanos. Like, Thanos might not felt the need to come here anymore, because we don't know about any of the stones. Like, it's not as, as prevalent, I guess.
yeah,
So seeing all those stuff and seeing how Wakanda was different without T'Challa was pretty insane also, because we see Shuri at a younger age now.
mm-hmm.
She is not like, because all of this stuff has happened at a different time now. And seeing Shuri at a different age, seeing, exactly, and the T'Chaka being alive, but also knowing the story, because he also knows, like, hey, T'Chaka's alive, but he also was the reason why Killmonger's dad is dead.
Yeah,
Like, you know what I mean? So like, he told him to believe the lie and all that stuff. So Killmonger knows in his head that that's what's happened, which, can be missed, because I don't feel like they explained that, at least his motive in that sense, well
well, because
enough,
you can
because
see that he's asking him. He's like, well, what basically, essentially, like, hey, did your dad ever talk about me, or what do you
yeah,
know? Like, what
hmm
he's used
yeah,
to,
because
and he's
he's
like,
trying
oh,
to
he used to
fish for
tell
the
me, yeah.
information.
He's like, oh,
Yeah,
he used to tell me stories about stuff like that. Because as soon as he's like, yeah, you told me you killed him. all
Yeah.
hell's gonna break loose.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he doesn't, and again, he doesn't fully know that because remember, in like he knows he died. He
Yeah,
just doesn't know how,
yeah.
right? So that's why it was interesting to see all of that and just his whole plan again. Even when he gets inside of Wakanda and he's like, hey, he's playing double agent the whole time, but he has his own motive, and it's also great to see Ross. I love how Ross is like the military face
Yeah.
of all of this. Like anytime the military's involved, General Ross is there. And I think that's so cool that that was a reference we've never like gotten away from. That General Ross, if you think military in the MCU, General Ross is involved. Regardless. Like and I'm just so happy he comes back to do it every single time. He has no problem doing it. And I think keeping him as the face of the military for the MCU is so good because maybe eventually we can get a Hulk story that is a solo Hulk story. Universal, just give up the rights already. Just stop playing. Gosh, like you're hindering the stories. Mark Ruffalo deserves his own movie. Like he doesn't
He
need to
does.
be a tie-in in all these other movies or TV shows. And that's just what the contract is. It's like they just can't do any solo Hulk movies. They have to tie him into something. So because I mean Planet Hulk would be so good. They just I know we're past that part in the timeline, but man, we got robbed of a Planet
Yeah.
Hulk movie. Like we've legit been robbed of that because yeah. And then I love the thing what they did with the with Wakanda, with him still having the necklace of having the ring and then having the power and him knowing how to use like he's like, hey, this thing has like a bunch of energy, which is
Yeah.
like a hark back to when to Shuri's suit for the for Black Panther. So I thought that was amazing that they referenced things like that. So
I thought it was cool seeing T'Challa's mom, the queen,
yes,
seeing her,
be
whenever
the
he's like,
queen of like
yeah,
be the general of the Dora Milaje,
yeah,
which was amazing because it was like you're so used to seeing Okoye at that role, and then when he's like general, and I was like, oh, they're gonna go to Okoye, and then I was like, wait, what? So that was dope, and
yeah,
like just her, I mean her passion, and having the like what I mean, really being hurt that her son is gone,
yeah.
like it just hurt her during that whole fight, and she's like for T'Challa, it's just
And
man,
then we get the scene, the
oh
confronting scene. He gets he's like, this will give you the power. As soon as he took a sip of it, right? I knew what was gonna happen. I was like,
oh yeah, no.
here
Well,
we go.
once he said, which this was two things that I thought they did really well towards the end of the episode, because the one thing is he gets to see the sunset,
Yeah.
which remember in Black Panther is where he dies,
Yeah.
seeing the sunset. So now him becoming Black Panther after seeing the sunset is a really cool like, hey, yeah, he died this way, but now in this
He's
story,
made it past
he
that
actually
point.
he becomes the Black Panther because of this point, like after this point. So that that scene where and we knew because it's always the last person who was the Black Panther,
Yeah.
and then just having that whole conversation where
When
he's
he
like,
jumps down and he's like, was it worth
yeah,
it? And he jumps down
yeah,
as I was like,
yeah,
oh
yeah,
shoot.
yeah, and he knows, and like he's just like, hey, your search for power and all this stuff is gonna bite you in the butt. You know what I mean? Like eventually it's gonna catch up to you, and him just reacting to that and being like, yo, it was all crazy because like it's such a good way to have that in like they're always gonna be connected, right? And just even in this story, just it being different, the way they're connected makes it so cool. It's just like, damn, like T'Challa just told you, like, you're fucking up, homie.
Well,
Like,
yeah, I mean that's a big key there too. Is that T'Challa would continued to give knowledge and wisdom instead of like he could have gotten
Yeah.
angry and be like, bro, what the hell? Like
Yeah, like why'd you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But instead, he's just like he's calmly telling him, he's like, he's like, well, I'm gone. I'm not in this life. And he's like, all I can do is try to get you back on the right path to fix this. So yeah.
And he does it. And I mean, he becomes Black Panther, and then obviously Shuri and Potts, because
Shuri knows.
like the Watcher always said, and again, the Watcher deserves so much credit because this show it's just so good. And this is the guy from Westworld,
Yeah,
who he
Bernard.
is, right?
Yeah. I was super hyped whenever he was announced.
Exactly.
I was like, yes.
His voice is so good, but the little details that he gives, like even at the beginning when he's like, oh, one person, like a hero's not being like heroes are not born, they're made, and then he was like, but this gives a villain another chance, which is pretty much a foreshadowing of like, hey, he's gonna be bad, by the way. Like there's
It's just
no
another
like
way of him
him,
being
yeah,
bad.
yeah, like he's gonna be bad. There's no him being good. So honestly, we shouldn't have been shocked about all these turn of events. But I know inside of us, we were like, man, if we could just make him good here,
Yeah.
then my whole theory thing could happen. But not to say my theory thing still can't happen. It just we would be dealing with still an asshole of Killmonger. We would like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he is the Black Panther right now. Like there is no denying that. And maybe he'll have a change of leaf. No, he won't. But still, you know what I mean?
I mean,
So
maybe he could have if I feel like if Suri didn't find out and they
yes.
kept going, I feel like
Mhm.
eventually he'd be like, okay, now I can do all these right things.
But no.
Yeah, but
He gave us no evidence that he was ever going to turn to the good. So I mean, he's again, it's one of those morality things. It's just like, what is he going to do with now that he has the power of Black Panther? Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Because he technically does become Black Panther in Black Panther for that short, brief time. You know what I mean? So who knows what he's going to do? But it is nice to see Shuri trying to prevent that and Potts trying to prevent that, knowing, hey, you killed Tony. Like, you know what I mean? So all of that, the way that the story ended up working itself out was still so cool. Like and that's a story where you're just like, damn, I don't really like to want a sequel to some of these things, but I kind of want to know what happens next for
Yeah.
this. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I just want to know what, I do like that having it in our imagination, like, hey, this is what might happen or this could happen. You know what I mean? But still, it's kind of one of those things where I wouldn't mind seeing that like next. Like, let me see what happens. Who fixes this? You know what I mean? So I think that's dope.
Yeah, man.
But yeah. So my rant, by the way, so the director
Oh, here
of
we go.
Dune, right? He comes out and listen, people, just don't be directors, don't be that guy. Okay. He comes out and says there's too many Marvel movies that are nothing more than a cut and paste of others. Like that. So he's basically saying all Marvel movies are the same. And you can't say that, people, because it's such a general statement, especially when I know, and I'm not for sure about this, but I can guarantee he hasn't seen all the movies. And you cannot tell me that Thor 2 is the same as Cap 2, because those are vastly different movies. So stop with these generic statements of trying to bash on Marvel movies on originality when you're making a movie based off of a book that was a remake of another movie. So stop. Like, stop with this. It's not original kind of stuff, because you are also not doing an original movie. Like, you're doing a movie based off of something. So stop with this whole like context of they're all the same. Like, when you're literally not like doing a movie that is based off originality. So
Sipping on the
that's the end of
haterade,
my
man.
rant. But like, just stop. Or if you want to make them different, there's plenty of superheroes who need a story. Make one that's different if you feel they're all the same. Just saying, even though they're not. Because as a person who's watched all of them, I feel like I'm a little bit more inclined to tell you that all those movies are not the same.
I feel you.
Because there is a huge difference between some of these movies, and there's some bad ones. I won't deny that. Like, I'm not going to say they were all great, but they're also just not the same movie. And if we're starting to do things like that, then we're going to start doing the thing where we're going to say, well, all horror movies are the same or all action movies are the same. You can't just generalize a movie because they're based off superheroes. Because again, Black Panther and Cap are not the same movie.
Yeah.
Like, the premise of them being superheroes is the only thing that's the same. But the fact, like the way that they dialogue and the way that the conversations and all that stuff happen, they're different movies. Period. So that's my rant. And stop hating on Marvel movies. And I'm not just saying this because I love Marvel movies. I'm just saying you can't generalize the Marvel movies like that, because then you're going to start doing it with other movies.
Yeah.
And you're going to start saying all horror movies are the same, and that's not the truth. Like, yes, they have a similar beginning where it's a horror movie, but usually that's where it stops.
Well, it's a genre, so it's like
Yeah, it's a
that's
genre,
what makes
yeah.
it a genre. Like
Exactly. So, like, for instance, you're directing Dune. How would you feel if someone, well, all sci-fi movies are the same?
yeah,
Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
it's
Stop bashing your peers.
uh,
And it's also like a slap in the face to all of the people who've made these movies,
yeah.
who, you know what I mean? Like directors who are your peers who have made these movies to bring a different take on it. You know what I mean? To feel like it's a different movie. It's not that they're not all the same. It's just not correct speaking, is what I mean. And don't generalize every movie, especially when I can bet you have not seen all of them. So that is my rant. Chris, what was your favorite part of this episode?
Oh man, favorite part of this episode. I did like that last fight with the with in Wakanda with the robots and everything like that. I did like seeing Killmonger fight, because even though I felt like, man, this bastard, and it's like, oh no, but he's so cool at the same time, and seeing like the Dora Milaje fight and everything, I thought it was really cool. I really like that fight scene. So
yeah, it was cool. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this episode, my favorite essentially was just the way that they were able to make everything mesh with giving us enough of the old and still giving us what was a brand new story. So I feel like those are going to be the best episodes for my personal take. I don't think, like, generally, whatever's your favorite's your favorite, but it is what it is, right? I feel like having that good mesh is what we like in a what if episode, because it still gives us enough of the old stuff, but still gives us a brand new story. And I say that would be my favorite because it's cool to me. Like that perfect balance of it to me is just perfect. So
actually, no, I'll change mine to the
part.
talk with T'Challa, because coming in, like,
Yeah.
I felt that like pit in my stomach of like, okay, he has to. It's like, could you imagine in a world like where, you know, somebody killed somebody and then you see them and that, like, you have to confront them in the afterlife, like you have to see this person again. It's just like I had that feeling. I'm like, oh my god, like I'm like,
like you have to deal with that.
You have to deal with it, and you're gonna see
Yeah.
it face to face. Like they're gonna confront you.
Yeah.
They get a chance to talk to you about it, and it's like, oh, it's nuts.
I agree. That part is 100% amazing.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, that is going to be the end of this episode. Like I said in the earlier parts of this episode, please like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. We're doing a mouse giveaway once we hit 100 subs. Check us out every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for the live show. And then next week, we will be back to do another episode of What If. And I believe we're also going to be doing an episode. I mean, we're going to be doing LPF debrief, and then I think we're going to be doing 2, because I believe by that time Star Wars would be out. But we're going to see how we're going to do it. I think we might still do it episodic, like even if it all comes out at the same time.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I heard it's not. I try to do more research.
Episodic?
I'm seeing mixed views,
That's
so
what
we'll
I'm saying.
see this week. We'll find out this
I've
week.
only saw on Wikipedia that said that all 6 are going to drop, which it makes sense to me, because I was thinking Star Wars Day were for Fridays, so they're releasing this on a Wednesday. So I don't think they're going to want both of them to clash at the same time, because that doesn't make sense unless you were dropping it all at the same time. Because then it makes sense, because then you're going into the weekend with a bunch of content for people to watch. So we'll see, but we'll figure that out. Just stay tuned. Follow us on all the social stuff. Follow our streams too. I have one. Chris has one. We'll put all the links and stuff like that. So until next time, Fire Team out.